My name is Rebecca. I'm 31 years old and I live and work in Chicago. I never imagined that a trip I thought would be filled with love would become the reason I could never see my family the same way again. It was a winter weekend morning. Snow falling so heavily that the streetlights looked like faint glowing dots in the wind. I left at 6 a.m., driving over 8 hours through icy roads to a small town in Vermont, where my family was throwing an engagement party for my sister Caroline. In the passenger seat was a carefully wrapped wedding cake box. Quiet like a sweet secret, it was a 2-tier red velvet cake with cream cheese frosting, decorated with sugar flowers. Caroline once called it her high school dream. I had ordered the cake from a famous bakery nearly 2 weeks earlier and paid extra for it to be freshly made that morning, not because I had time to spare, but because I loved my sister enough to trade comfort for her smile. I wore a fitted black dress, layered it with a beige coat, and changed into heels in a gas station restroom along the way. Every time I looked in the mirror, I told myself, I'm doing this for Caroline because she's worth it. When my car turned onto the driveway of the estate hosting the party, I nearly lost my breath. The house glowed like a fairy tale in the snowy forest. Warm yellow lights wrapped around the trees, and silver-white ribbons swayed gently in the wind. I remember whispering, Caroline won't forget me after this. The words echoed inside the car like a fragile little prayer. I handed the keys to the valet. He raised an eyebrow when he saw me step out, holding the cake box. Are you with the wedding catering? He asked, polite but distant. I smiled, relieved, thinking he was joking. No, I'm the bride's sister. He nodded, said nothing more. I walked into the foyer, where the scent of vanilla candles mixed with soft violin music from inside. But strangely, no one came to greet me, no hug, no how was the drive? Just a few guests glancing my way and quickly looking away, like I was a stranger who had walked into the wrong house. I held the cake box tightly and continued into the main hall, where Caroline stood beside her fiancé Jason, wearing an ivory satin dress, soft curls framing a face always praised as the family jewel. She was laughing brightly with her friends, until she saw me. Caroline's smile vanished in an instant. You actually came? She asked, eyes narrowing like she couldn't believe it. 8 hours through heavy snow. Of course I came. Surprised, I said, trying to keep my tone light. Caroline didn't take the cake box. She didn't step closer either. She just said, I didn't think you'd come with the weather and all. I placed the box beside a macaron tray, still trying to smile. Well, it's your special day. Behind her, one of the bridesmaids whispered loudly enough, She's not on the guest list, right? I heard every word. My heart cracked. Caroline glanced at her but said nothing, then turned away. Seconds later, she leaned toward Jason and walked off down the hallway. I stood there in my damp coat among unfamiliar faces. People passed me like I was a mismatched decoration. That was when I realized I wasn't an unexpected guest. I was a name crossed out, and maybe crossed out a long time ago. I decided to find my mother. If anyone could understand why I showed up, if anyone might see the effort I'd made, I still wanted to believe it was her. She stood near the fireplace wearing a wine-red velvet dress, a silk scarf around her neck, holding a glass of white wine like a speaker ready to take the stage. As I approached, she looked over her shoulder, set the glass down, and didn't meet my eyes. Rebecca, she said softly, as if afraid someone might hear. I didn't think you'd actually come. Why not? I asked, trying to sound calm. I messaged a week ago. No one replied, but I still hoped. She cut me off quickly, firmly. Let's not make this complicated. Today is Caroline's day. Let's not turn it into something else. I gripped my purse strap. What do you mean? She sighed, turned fully toward me, offering a faint, polite smile. I mean, you tend to draw a lot of attention. Let the event flow quietly. Don't become the center. I smiled, but there was no joy in it. I just drove almost 9 hours through snow to bring Caroline her favorite cake. I thought that might mean something. Rebecca, my mother said, her eyes colder than the winter wind. Sometimes kindness is all about timing. Her words echoed in my head as I wandered around the hall. Soft jazz played in the background. People floated past me like wind. No one asked if I needed anything. No one asked if I was cold. In the center of the room was a photo display of Caroline and Jason, each frame carefully chosen. Walking hand in hand through Central Park, Caroline holding tulips in a white sweater, Jason smiling as he proposed by the river. All perfect and absolutely none of me. Not one picture. I went to the reception table, where the guest list and seating chart were displayed. I scanned every name, every printed surname on ivory paper. Old college friends of Caroline, a woman our grandmother met twice at a charity gala, but not me. A staff member caught my glance. She smiled gently. "Excuse me, can I help you?" I pointed to the seating map. "I'm the bride's sister. I don't see my name." She checked the list carefully. "Rebecca Collins?" "Yeah." She bit her lip. "I'm sorry. Maybe you're an unexpected guest." "No, I'm family," I said. She nodded slightly, then stepped back. I stood there, frozen inside. Around me, joyful wishes rang out, like no one noticed I was unraveling. I found an empty chair near the dessert table, but before I could sit, another staff member approached. "Sorry," he said gently but firmly. "That seat is for the DJ's assistant." I nodded, pressed my lips together. "I understand." Then I walked to the dimmest corner of the room, where the lights faded and the laughter thinned. I poured myself a glass of water and held it with both hands, like its cold could drown the emptiness in my chest. From there I could see the slideshow on a giant screen. Pictures of Caroline's life from childhood to now. Her with ribbons in her hair, her winning the high school dance award, graduating college, traveling through Italy. Each moment carefully chosen. And I, her sister, was missing from every single one, like I'd never existed in her life at all. A wave of cold washed over me, not from the snow outside, but from the realization of what I once called family. I stepped into the coat room, not to take off my coat but to breathe. A narrow room with soft yellow lighting and crowded hangers became my only refuge from the storm of distant stares outside. On a small side table was a tray of bridesmaid gifts. 10 tiny boxes, each tied with pink ribbon. I glanced at the names: Julia, Erica, Claire, Hannah. Mine wasn't there. Not a mistake. They made sure of it. I sank into a velvet chair nearby, instinctively reaching for my phone. The screen lit up. No missed calls, no new messages. I opened my messaging app, scrolling for comfort. That's when I noticed it. A new group chat. Caroline's Dream Team. I frowned. I didn't remember joining this. Maybe someone added me by accident. The last message was from 3 hours ago from Julia, one of the bridesmaids. "Everything's pretty and perfect, just like we planned." Above it were earlier texts. "Claire. She's definitely not coming. She hates crowds." "Hannah. Even better. The vibe will be lighter." Then I saw it, the one that broke me. "Caroline. She doesn't fit the image. I'll just say the list is full. Having her in the wedding photos would be awkward." Below was a cringing emoji and a shaking head gif. I don't know how long I stared. Every word felt like it was carved straight into my chest. Caroline didn't just leave me out. She planned to leave me out. And the worst part was I never suspected a thing. I left the group chat, slid my phone back into my purse, my hands trembling. Not from the cold, not anymore. I stepped out of the coat room, no destination in mind, just needing to escape those walls closing in. While searching for an exit, I wandered into a narrow hallway between the kitchen and staff area. There, under dim yellow ceiling lights, trays of untouched food waited to be brought out. I was about to turn back when I heard laughter from behind a cracked door. A voice so familiar it made me freeze. It was Caroline. I still can't believe she actually drove all the way here. Who does that? Then Hannah's voice. A whole road trip just to bring what, a homemade cake that looks like it's from a discount store? Laughter burst out. I froze, held my breath. Caroline continued, her voice lower but no less cutting. If she hadn't come, everything would have been perfect. I was hoping the weather would keep her away. Claire chimed in. Maybe she would have spun out on the road or something. That way, we'd have an excuse to be sad and still enjoy the peace. This time it wasn't just a laugh. It was an eruption of laughter, light, ruthless, and all too familiar. The kind of laughter I'd heard my entire childhood, only back then I didn't know who it was aimed at. Now I did. I stepped back, my hand reaching for the wall to steady myself. The floor felt like it tilted, not because I lost my balance but because the whole world had just collapsed. None of them thought I could hear. And that's what hurt the most, because what people say behind your back, that's what they really mean. And the truth was, I had never been wanted here. I turned away. I didn't know where I was going, but for the first time I knew this much. I wasn't mistaken. I wouldn't excuse them anymore through blind hope. I had heard everything. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure I wanted to forgive and return to the main hall. There was no reason to stay in a place where even breathing made my chest ache. Instead, I quietly stepped out through the side door near the kitchen, my long coat still streaked with old snow from that morning's drive. The cold wind whipped against my face, like it was trying to wash away every illusion I had brought with me. But the coldest thing wasn't the weather. It was the silence from the people I once called family. I sat in my car for a long time. The engine was off, but my mind kept racing. My phone lit up with a new message. It was from my mother, just one line. "Rebecca, don't make a scene." I stared at the text, mind blank. Above it, my earlier message still sat. "Mom, I'm on my way. Hope you'll all be surprised." Marked as read. No reply. I didn't respond. I had no energy left to explain or defend something that never should have needed explanation. I just wanted to be there for my sister. I sat in that darkness until the golden lights from the estate across the road disappeared into nightfall. I didn't drive home that night. I booked a room at a cheap motel 30 minutes away. My dress was wrinkled, makeup smeared after countless attempts not to cry. I didn't turn on the TV, didn't check social media. I just lay there staring at the stained ceiling, letting the memory of the evening drain me one breath at a time. The next morning, I woke up to my phone ringing. My head was still spinning from lack of sleep. When I opened Instagram, the first post was from Caroline. A heavily filtered photo, Caroline surrounded by her bridesmaids, holding a champagne glass. Soft light glowing against her satin dress, twinkling lights behind them, just like the fairy tale wedding invites. The caption read, "A perfect night with all the people I love most." I wasn't in the photo. No tag, no mention, no thank you. Not a single trace that I had ever been there. I scrolled through the comments. "Caroline, the most beautiful bride. Everything looks amazing. Wish I'd been invited." No one asked about me. No one wondered about the wedding cake, about the person who drove over 400 miles to show up, then vanished without a trace. The next message came from my cousin Julia. "Rebecca, last night wasn't easy, but I hope you understand that party wasn't the place to ask for attention." Then another text from my mother, this time in the family group chat, family group Collins. "She's going through a rough patch. Let's be patient. Don't add fuel to the fire." I read it over and over, as if my brain needed multiple passes to fully understand. Rough patch? They were rewriting the story. A new version of Rebecca. Unhinged, disruptive, embarrassing. No one mentioned what I'd heard behind that kitchen door. No one asked why I left in silence. No one asked if I was okay. A message from an old friend, someone I hadn't heard from in nearly 3 years, came in. Or the engagement party got awkward. "Caroline said you caused a scene and disappeared. You all right?" I didn't reply because I understood. I hadn't just been erased from the guest list. I'd been erased from the narrative, like my presence was a glitch needing to be edited out. Like I had never been the main character in anyone's memory, just an extra, easily cut to preserve the perfect picture. I opened my laptop, created a new folder, and titled it The Truth. In it I saved photos, the wedding cake receipt, the untouched cake box on the kitchen counter, the snow-covered driveway from yesterday. I saved screenshots of the group chat between Caroline and her friends. I didn't know exactly why I did it, but maybe one day if someone ever asked, was it really that bad? I wanted to be able to say, yes. These were the things they'd never tell you. They could erase me from the party. They could crop me out of the photos, but I wasn't going to let them define me with silence anymore. I spent all Sunday afternoon in my small Chicago apartment, soft light from the window falling across the kitchen table, where I laid out everything others had chosen to ignore. My laptop was open, the screen showing the folder labeled The Truth, where I'd saved the things no one wanted to acknowledge, a photo of the red velvet wedding cake I brought, still sealed in its silver box, never opened, a receipt for over $200, paid in advance for the bakery to prepare it fresh that morning, a selfie I took in front of Caroline's estate, hair messy from the snowstorm, coat soaked through, still clutching the cake like a precious gift. I opened Instagram. The first photo I posted was of the cake, outdoors, snow all around it, the gold ribbon standing out against the white. The caption read, "Not everything we bring is appreciated. That doesn't mean it has no value." The second post was the receipt screenshot from the email confirmation. The note reading, 2-tier red velvet wedding cake to be delivered Saturday morning for Caroline Collins. The third was a photo from inside my car, windshield covered in snow, everything outside blurred white, like the sky itself had tried to stop me. And I came anyway. I turned off the comments, not because I feared conflict, but because I didn't need permission to tell my story. Then I opened my email. Recipients: Mom Linda Collins, Aunt Martha Caroline Collins. Subject: the wedding cake. I kept it brief. Attached is the receipt for the wedding cake I ordered, paid for, and brought on Saturday. The cake was never opened, never mentioned. I don't need thanks. I just want you to see the truth. I attached the 3 photos and hit send. Mom replied in less than 5 minutes. Rebecca, this isn't helping. You're making things worse. And I didn't respond. I opened a new message, this time addressed to the PR department of Lockage Financial, where Jason, Caroline's fiancé, worked. I wasn't sure if they'd care, but I knew one thing. This firm cared deeply about reputation and stayed far away from personal scandals that could affect investor confidence. I didn't write much. I simply attached 2 files. A screenshot of the family group Collins chat, where my mother called me unstable and Caroline mocked me for turning this into a tragedy, and a recording from that night, the one where Caroline and her friends laughed about the idea of me getting into an accident on the way. The voices were clear, sharp, unmistakable. Subject: information that may be relevant to company image. No caption, no explanation. I left it for them to decide. When it was done, I closed my laptop, poured myself a glass of water, my hands still shaking, not out of fear of their reaction, but because for the first time I had done it. I pushed back. No yelling, no pleading to be included, just the truth laid bare to see if they'd still pretend not to know. A few hours later, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Rebecca, this is Lindsay from PR at Lockage. Thank you for sharing the information. We are reviewing the content, and will proceed according to company policy. I didn't know what would happen next, but the fact that they responded, something my own family hadn't done, was enough to tell me. This time they couldn't bury it. That night, Caroline posted an Instagram story, a short video clip of flickering candles with text across the screen. There's always someone who can't stand to see you happy. No name, no tags, but everyone knew who it was about. I just smiled and closed my phone. I didn't need to reply with words because this time they had written the play, and I was only the one who pulled back the curtain so the audience could see backstage. On Wednesday morning, while I was making coffee, a text came in from Monica, an old childhood friend who lived near Caroline. Did you hear? The family meet and greet dinner got canceled. Jason said he needs to reevaluate everything. I stood still in the kitchen. The smell of coffee couldn't cover the shake in my wrist. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel hurt. I just felt that the truth had finally knocked on the right door. The weekend brunch at Aunt Martha's house went on as planned, a little gathering to smooth things over, as Mom had put it. I was invited reluctantly, like a side dish people only served because the hotel already included it in the menu. I arrived 10 minutes late, not because of traffic, but because I wanted to see every face as I walked in, to know who was waiting for me to speak and who was praying I'd stay silent. Caroline sat at the center of the long table, wearing a cream knit dress lightly made up, but the fatigue beneath her mascara was impossible to hide. Jason wasn't there. Mom offered a stiff smile and let out a breath of relief. I nodded silently and took my assigned seat at the far end of the table, next to a vase of white tulips. Caroline spoke first, as always, her voice sweet with a hint of reflection. This past week has been an emotional journey. I think we've all seen where the strength of family truly lies. Heads nodded around the table. Everyone knew what she meant and who she meant. I set my water glass down, wiped the rim with a napkin, and looked up. I'd like to say a few words too. Caroline paused. Rebecca, today isn't. Just 1 minute, I said, calm but firm. I took out my phone, opened the saved audio clip, and hit play. Caroline's voice rang out, clear but ice cold. She doesn't fit the image. I'll just say the list is full. Having her in the wedding photos would be awkward. Laughter followed. Then Julia's voice. Maybe she'll spin out on the road. That way, we'd have a reason to be sad and peace too. The room was full but completely silent, only their own words playing back through the small speaker. Each sentence like a verdict. Caroline turned pale. My mother set down her glass, her composure gone. Aunt Martha covered her mouth. No more nods now. I stopped the recording after 10 seconds. Enough. That's what I heard at Caroline's engagement party, I said, my voice oddly steady. I thought I came with a gift, with love. But I was just an inconvenience to be hidden. Caroline stood. Rebecca, that was a joke, I interrupted. A careless moment or a plan all along? No one answered. I looked straight at my mother, then at Aunt Martha. If I didn't have that recording, would any of you believe me? My mother said nothing. Her eyes drifted away. Does Jason know? A relative asked, clearly uneasy. Caroline swallowed. He needs time to think. I nodded. Good. He should know who he's marrying. I didn't wait for a response. I stood, gently pushed the chair back in, and looked around the table, at the faces that once turned away at the party, now watching me like they were seeing me for the first time. As I walked out the door, Aunt Martha followed. She touched my arm and whispered, "You didn't just stand up for yourself. You reminded this family that the truth still deserves a voice." I just nodded and stepped into the bright morning sun. Above, the clouds were parting, revealing a sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. For the first time in years, I felt no need to explain myself because this time they had said it all. A week had passed since that brunch, and my phone remained completely silent. No apologies, no check-ins, just a few Instagram notifications from old friends liking the post of the wedding cake I had brought through the snowstorm, and a handful of quiet messages from people who, like me, had once been pushed aside by their families. I didn't try to reach out to Caroline. I wasn't angry anymore. I just felt empty, as if a long chapter had closed with no tragic ending, no need for resolution, just done. On Friday night, while folding laundry, my phone rang. The screen lit up with a familiar name, Caroline. I hesitated. My hand hovered over the decline button, then stopped. Finally, I set the phone on the table, hit accept, and put it on speaker. Rebecca. Her voice was hoarse. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but please, just once. I said nothing. I was wrong, Caroline continued, each word sounding like it was fighting its way through icy water. My whole life, people compared me to you. You were independent, smart, never needed anyone. And I always had to work harder just to be seen. I leaned back in my chair, staring up at the ceiling. I never thought I'd hear this from Caroline. I was jealous of you, she admitted plainly. Even at my own engagement party, I felt scared. Scared of how Jason looked at you when you walked in. Scared of people praising you for driving through a snowstorm. Scared that, once again, I'd be the shadow. I closed my eyes. The familiar ache returned, not because of her words, but because I'd once wished to hear them so much sooner. But that doesn't excuse what I did, Caroline said, her voice cracking. It was selfish and cowardly. I left you off the guest list, laughed behind your back, then spun a story that made you the problem. I know nothing can undo that. I exhaled slowly and replied, "You're right. Nothing can undo it. But I also don't want to carry those scars forever." There was a pause. Then Caroline asked, barely above a whisper, "Can you forgive me?" I thought about it. Forgiveness didn't mean starting over. It didn't mean stepping into the same circle again. "I don't hate you, Caroline," I said honestly, "but I can't go back to the way things were. Some relationships need to end for both sides to grow." Caroline didn't respond. We just sat in silence, breathing on opposite ends of a broken bridge. Then she said, "Goodbye." Not tearful, not dramatic, just an ending that arrived right on time. The next day, I went to the local bakery, the same one where I had ordered the red velvet cake. The shop owner remembered me and smiled when she saw me walk in. "What'll it be this time?" she asked. I smiled gently. Just a small cake, vanilla frosting, simple design, no message, just sweet and honest. That evening, I placed the cake in the center of my kitchen table, lit a small candle. Not for a birthday, not for an anniversary, just to mark a moment when I chose myself over trying to please anyone else. I poured a cup of hot tea, sliced a piece of cake, and sat by the window watching light snow fall outside. In my hand was my phone, already open to a draft. After countless edits, I was finally ready to post the final message. To anyone who's ever felt like the extra in their own family story, you're not wrong. You're not too sensitive. You're just being real. and that has never been something to apologize for. I once walked through a snowstorm to bring the best of myself, and I left empty-handed. But I'm no longer sorry because now I know family isn't made by blood. It's built on mutual choice. And I've finally chosen me. I hit post. No waiting, no fear, just relief, like setting down a weight I'd carried for too long. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. Not out of anxiety, not out of lingering sadness, just because there was nothing to hide from anymore. The winter light slipped gently through the curtains, softer than I expected. I made coffee and stood by the kitchen window, looking out at the thin sheet of ice still clinging to the street. I wasn't thinking much about what Caroline had said the night before. Not because I forgot, but because I no longer needed to keep it in my head like a wound. For the first time in years, my mind felt like it had room to breathe. A few hours later, I received a message from a former coworker, Melissa. I read your post. I went through something similar with my cousin. Thank you for saying what I couldn't. Then another from someone I'd known in college. You're not alone. Family isn't always the safest place. All morning, my inbox filled with messages from people who had once been silent when I needed to be seen. Now, when I no longer waited for anyone's approval, my voice had somehow helped others feel seen too. It was something I never expected, that my story, which once felt small and misplaced, could reach so many. And I realized sometimes silence isn't peace. It's a quiet eraser. The silence from Caroline, from Mom, from those who saw me sitting alone at that party and turned away. It wasn't because they didn't know what was happening. It was because they chose not to acknowledge me, because I made them uncomfortable, because I didn't fit the narrative they wanted to present. And I had been silent too long. I was afraid that if I spoke up, I'd be seen as the troublemaker, the too emotional daughter, the one who ruined the mood. But the truth is that so-called peace was never meant for me. The moment I spoke, hit post, played the audio, sent the email, that's when I stopped being the victim in someone else's story. I became the one writing it over. Telling the truth doesn't make you bad. Sets you free. Not everyone will understand. Not everyone will applaud. Some family members quietly unfollowed me, didn't message, didn't call. But for the first time in my life, I didn't need them to. I didn't need anyone to confirm I was right to know I wasn't wrong. That afternoon, I walked to the bakery, not to buy another cake, but to thank the owner for the quiet kindness she gave when my own family couldn't. She smiled and didn't ask questions, only said, "When you first came in, I had a feeling that cake wasn't just for celebration." I nodded. It was the last gift I brought to a door that had already closed. On the walk home, snow started to fall. Gently, steadily, not harsh, not bitter, just soft, like it was laying down a fresh layer of clean white over everything. I stopped in the middle of the street, tilted my face toward the sky and thought, not every storm comes to destroy. Some come only to clear the sky. And I had walked through a storm like that. That night, I pulled out the old journal I had set aside when I was 26. I turned to the first page where I had once written, "Maybe if I'm gentle enough, they'll let me stay." I smiled and gently crossed out that line with a blue ink pen, then wrote a new one just below it. No one has the right to keep or cast someone out if that person has chosen to walk forward in their own truth. I closed the journal, turned off the lights, and left a small candle burning quietly in the corner of the kitchen. And for the first time in a very long while, I slept deeply, no dreams, no jolts awake, no voices echoing in my mind. Only peace, not from forgetting, but from finally facing everything and letting go. Rebecca's story isn't just about leaving a party. It's about returning to herself. From someone who always tried to be accepted by a family that never truly listened, she found the courage to speak up, face the pain, and release old expectations. Rebecca shows us that the truth, even when hard to hear, always deserves to be spoken. And sometimes the strongest thing we can do isn't to forgive, but to no longer need someone in order to be at peace. What do you think about Rebecca's choice? Would you dare to speak up if your own family shut you out? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family and life.